things that people have discovered for free are being turned around and sold for, in some cases, hundreds of dollars.
Hello and welcome back to Brittany Bits. Today we have Jackson Lasky joining us from DuroDogs. Hello and welcome to the show, Jackson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing extremely well, Brittany. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. Do you think you could start us off with a little bit about yourself, your background, and how and why you became involved in Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure thing. So I got into Bitcoin totally, I guess you could say by accident. Right before sort of getting into the crypto space in general, I was working in New York, sort of splitting my time between being a jazz musician. I play the piano. Let me turn off my phone. And also most of my income was coming from poker. So I was a professional poker player. If you've ever seen the movie Rounders, then that's sort of a decent approximation of kind of what was going on, except for not getting beat up. And also had a poker content education business. Previously, before getting into poker, I had been doing software development, but as a freelancer, you're kind of competing against people from the international market who are not living in New York City and paying New York rent. So I kind of found out that I could make a little bit more money playing poker, which was a fun surprise, I guess. And the reason I got into crypto is ultimately I was just kind of getting burned out from the poker scene. I was looking for something different to do, and I got recruited to a fund, which ultimately became Unbounded Capital. And I got started really just as an analyst. And at first, our mandate was very open-ended, essentially figure out how to make money in this burgeoning crypto space. The bad news is that it was the beginning of 2018. And so there had just been a massive market crash. And the whole space was, I would say, very unimpressive at that point in time. We had just gotten over this ICO boom, and there was a lot of wariness about the viability of those types of projects, both from kind of a practical and a legal standpoint.
Right.
And I think that was kind of our first strong thesis as a fund was stay away from ICOs, stay away from tokens. Maybe that didn't work out from like a pure dollars and cents standpoint, but it kind of led us to really trying to discover where the value was.
Right.
And ultimately, long story short, we ended up kind of going from BTC to BCH, ultimately to BSV. And we kind of took that final step. I was sort of new to crypto, as I mentioned. I'm fairly naive at this point. I'm just learning about BCH. I'm watching Roger Ver videos. I'm thinking to myself, okay, hey, this guy makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Why don't I share with some of my new crypto contacts all the great things I'm learning about Bitcoin Cash? And if you've been in the space for any amount of time, which I had not been, you would know what was coming for me, which was, what are you doing? Roger Ver's a scammer. He's trying to trick people into thinking Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin, yada, yada, yada. And I felt confident that I wasn't crazy and that Bitcoin Cash made actually a lot more sense than BTC.
Right.
And this was really right after the BCH BSV fork that this is happening. And eventually the thing that kind of triggered the chain of events that led to us becoming a BSV focused fund was someone basically said, as a point against my advocacy for Bitcoin Cash, like, if you like Bitcoin Cash, why not BSV?
Right.
And the implication is that BSV is so crazy, so obviously junk, that if you're one step closer to it than I am, you must be going down the wrong path. So I get the opposite impression. I'm like, oh, wow, that's a good point. I mean, we should definitely check out BSV. You're right. So we check out BSV and we kind of never turned back. And then ultimately, when quarantine started in 2020, my partner in Omega Capital, Dave, and we wrote a book. At first, we called it Why Multicoin Capital is Wrong. We tried to tone it back a little bit. So we called it Why BSV or Why Bitcoin SV Will Win. And that book, I think, really encapsulates kind of the journey from a research standpoint, starting out with this open-ended crypto mandate, trying to understand how crypto sees itself,
Right.
and then ultimately getting into the BSV space and trying to parse out how is it that these two groups have such different ideas of why this technology is valuable, and how has that impacted the technology itself. And after writing that book, that's really kind of what solidified in my mind that I actually, investing was not going to be enough. I wanted to really get hands-on with this technology that I have become so passionate about. And that's what led to the creation of what is now Nifty Jigs, and our game DuroDogs.
Absolutely. Well, can you tell us a little bit more about Nifty Jigs and what DuroDogs is and how it was formed? What makes Nifty Jigs unique compared to other protocols within BSV? And why did you guys choose to build on BSV to begin with? What makes NFTs on BSV particularly special compared to other chains?
Sure. Well, I'd love to sort of jump back because I know a lot of viewers will have seen me in the very early days of what's now called Nifty Jigs and was at that point called Unbounded Enterprise, talking about being a transaction processor. And that's really where I saw a ton of long-term opportunity. I mean, I think everybody in the BSV space does. And I felt like there were some things that we could do better than what was happening elsewhere in the space. But as we were kind of sinking our teeth into it, kind of came to the conclusion that we were not going to build the right kind of lowest level infrastructure type tools that a transaction processor ought to offer if we didn't have a better kind of hands-on grasp of what was happening at the consumer layer.
Yeah.
And we also, I mean, if not for crypto fights, the sort of revenue available to a transaction processor is not that high, even though transactions on BSV are really large. We felt like, hey, maybe we can do that later. For now, let's focus on actually driving Bitcoin adoption, getting people using BSV. And we had just a strong feeling that games was the place to start.
Makes sense.
And we didn't, when we kind of made that switch, we did not anticipate the kind of NFT boom that occurred over the summer, over the spring, summer, fall, especially of 2021. And has led to just this absolute proliferation of NFT related products, not just in BSV, but across the crypto world. It's really amazing. In terms of what makes us different or special, we don't have our own protocol. We use Run, which is a protocol built on BSV. And we use Run and we use BSV because we're really focused on scale and applications which require high scale for their NFTs. And that's primarily games today. Games that are looking to be able to support millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of users. Those are the types of apps that we want to support. And that's what we want DuroDogs to become. And that's really what our product is geared around. Every decision we make is geared around how are we going to enable the creation of games that can serve users at that kind of massive scale. And I think why BSV, for anyone who's watched your show for any length of time, it's probably pretty obvious why we made that choice.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Well, that's interesting that you say that it's built on Run, considering it is a hand cash app. So I would have figured that perhaps maybe it would have been built on, or at least the application would have been built on SDK. But it makes sense that it's on Run.
Well, we have done both. So what we've basically done is taken Brenton and the sort of basic Run implementation, which is getting better by the day. And we've taken that and we've sort of created not our own version of it, that'd be the wrong term. We've just kind of allocated the responsibilities of running a Run application between ourselves and Handcash. And then we've given access to that implementation between ourselves and Handcash via an API, which other applications are now starting to use to build with Run, but in a more abstracted way, kind of I think a much simpler way, especially for people who have not had their teeth sunk into BSV for years at this point. I think it's an easier way to get started. And Handcash is obviously a really great wallet. I think it's done the most in terms of making adoption really simple and straightforward. And yeah, I think that these are both really great companies. We're happy to be a bridge between these two technologies.
Absolutely. I think the community really needs more bridges between just like this, between the different protocols. That's absolutely fascinating to me. But you were talking about newer people to Bitcoin. What are some things that a brand new person of Bitcoin should know first about it as an introduction to the space? And what are some things that you think you are most mind blown about when it comes to Bitcoin SV? I know we touch on this a lot with our other viewers, but I'm interested to know your personal perspective.
So what do I think new people should know about Bitcoin SV? I think that if you're evaluating it as an investment, then what you should know is that it's architected completely for the purpose of scale and scaling the ability to make extremely efficient payments, scaled to make extremely secure and high volume transactions on a public ledger. And I think if you watch the rest of this video and hear us talk about maybe what some of the stuff we're doing at DuroDogs, hopefully that will convince you that this is a worthwhile enterprise. In terms of what surprises me most about BSV, just the challenge of it, because we have this amazing tool, but it still feels like the deck is extremely stacked against us, and it takes a lot of effort. I think it's going to be worthwhile, but definitely 3 or 4 years ago, and I think this is in part because I was not as much in the trenches of it, it seemed more likely to me that things would transpire much more quickly. And I think that could have been the case, but it makes more sense to me why it wasn't the case.
Right.
In part from a product perspective, in part from kind of better understanding the dynamics at play on the investor side of things and how that impacts the pace of development. So definitely, it's not surprising to me anymore, but one of the things that surprised me the most was, hey, buckle up, because this is not going to happen overnight. But I think that's okay. And I think that people who believe in the space, are investing in the space, they're not doing it because they expect to be able to flip their coins next month. They're doing it because they think that this thing is going to 0 or 1 million, and that the shot of getting to 1 million is high enough that they're going to buckle up for the ride.
Perfect. I like that. Eloquently put, I believe. But yeah, let's get into DuroDogs. So I guess the first question I'd really like to ask is, how many people are a part of the team and helping to build this with you?
So we're probably one of the larger teams in BSV at this point in time. We're 14 full-time. So we've got 6 engineers, a couple of designers, other people sort of in the product realm of things. And then the founders are Dave and myself, who both came over from Amana Capital. And we have a really fantastic team, a lot of people who fall into a couple categories. One of those is people who are coming from outside of the crypto space who have been BSV fans for a long time, and we're looking for an opportunity to go full time and get involved. And some of these people are really experienced, really impressive, really just fantastic to work with. They bring, I think, a wealth of knowledge about building great software products that I definitely think that we need ways of getting more of those types of folks into the space. Just because there's so many challenges to building a great business.
Yes.
Picking the right blockchain is only one of those. The other category of folks is that we've managed to also bring in some really great teams who are already building inside of BSV and already really had a deep knowledge of BSV as a technology and developing with BSV. And so that's been a huge accelerant for us, kind of tapping into both this, I don't want to say legacy knowledge because it's still incredibly applicable, but non-blockchain knowledge, but just knowledge about product in general,
Right.
combined with some really fantastic folks who are some of the most experienced BSV developers in the world. And so I think that's part of why we've been able to move fairly quickly. I think, we started building Nifty Jigs and DuroDogs over the summer. We launched in December, and I think that the game has already progressed a lot since then, and we've got some exciting stuff coming up over the next few months.
Absolutely. So what are the short-term and long-term goals for DuroDogs? And can you talk to us a bit about some of the challenges and hurdles you've overcome throughout the process up until and how actually?
I'm deciding which one of those. They're both good questions. I want to answer both. I'll start with the fun stuff. So what's coming up? In terms of just like a feature standpoint, some of the things we're really excited about are we're going to be launching more creator tools. So we just did a sort of alpha launch to about 150 folks of our game Rough Runner, which is the first game inside of DuroDogs Park. So DuroDogs is a game where you're raising digital pet dogs, and you can train them, they level up, you can get items, you can play dress up. We've got a lot of 25 to 35-year-old men playing dress up with their dogs and having a great time. So I think that's really fun. What we've done with DuroDogs Park is we say, okay, take this dog that's in this fairly stationary environment. We're just kind of training them, giving them commands. It's a pretty simple game. Let's take it into something that's more competitive, more skill-based, something that ultimately will be able to have an ILP integration with haste. And what we're going to be releasing over the coming weeks and months is tools where if you're a game developer, you can do what we've done with Rough Runner, and you can take these dogs, you can use the animations, the illustrations that we've created, build your own games. We have some people who are already doing that. And there's just gonna be more and more tools to support that type of project. And then on the other side, if you wanna be a digital good creator for the DuroDog space, if you wanna create hats, glasses, collars, and a lot of other cool stuff that you're gonna be able to do for the DuroDogs ecosystem, that's gonna be possible. We're releasing a more substantial marketplace. We have a really simple marketplace right now, but we're creating something that is gonna have a lot more functionality, that's gonna be usable both inside of DuroDogs and other games connected to the platform. And really, this is all in service of adoption. We want to have, I think that the best way of driving adoption is to have one really, really fantastic game. And I think that DuroDogs, I think its ability to leverage the creator economy and to give creators an amazing opportunity to profit from their work, I think will help us build a really, really amazing game, an amazing experience for new gamers very quickly. And I think that this is a great way to drive adoption. And that's really our biggest goal, short term, medium term, long term, is adoption. I think adoption is everything for BSV. And I think that enterprise adoption is possible, and that's something that people are working on. And I think that they should continue working on that. For us, we're totally focused on consumer adoption. And we think that we have a really strong path towards that with games and with the sort of unique feature sets that can be offered with BSV, that can be offered with Nifty Jigs.
Oh, absolutely. I like what you said there about the creating a creator platform. I think one thing that DuroDogs really well is bring in the users to actually play the game. So I think the implementation of creator platform for users and artists and everything to be able to create things on your platform, that'll be really fun and exciting, especially with all the NFTs that you guys are doing. But what are some things in Bitcoin that you don't like or would like to see changed and improved that would help your business? And what can we as regular people and users do to help?
I think just a more of a mindset on growing the pie for everybody. And I think there's a lot of concern, I think, about, all right, what are the missing pieces from a tech standpoint? What are the things that could work better than they work now? And that's fine, but I think those types of things, they're actually pretty hard to solve when you don't have as much data, when you don't have as much information about how people are actually using things or what types of problems come at scale when. It's hard to have a priority of what needs to be solved when. in order to facilitate growth when you don't have growth. So I think that I really love working with Run, working with Handcash, working with Haste Arcade, because those companies are really focused on what is it going to take to drive growth of users, and not as focused on some of the things that I think are less important today. Not to say that those other things are not important. Now, what I would say is that a big way that growth happens, I think people's engagement with products, engagement on social media is really fantastic. It's been so helpful to have such an engaged user base with a game like DuroDogs, who will play the game, give us great feedback, keep playing the game, keep having fun, keep talking about it. And that's been amazing. So keep that up for sure. I think definitely one thing that is extremely helpful is trying to find ways of bringing new people into the space. And those could be builders, they can be users, and they can even be investors. And I think that that's one thing that is probably the biggest inhibitor today in the BSV space, is just there is not very much money available to build products. And that's if you have a bootstrapping mindset and that's kind of the path you want to take, that's great and that's not a problem.
Right.
But a lot of the way that software products get built, especially software products that ultimately serve millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of users, it is through at least some degree of investment capital. And I think that the BSP space is well sort of set up for the VC type of, or whether it's angels or VCs, whatever it might be, that type of relationship, just because getting this thing off the ground is hard, but there's a huge payoff at the end for the companies that can do so successfully. And so I think more effort towards kind of growing the pie of funds available for companies in the space to work with is really, really important. It's been a huge part of what I think that we've been able to do in Unbounded Capital, where I'm still an advisor. And I know how much time goes there towards trying to educate the investor community about BSV, what's it all about, and just bring more investment dollars into the space to help accelerate the growth of companies. And I think that just more of that needs to happen. If it doesn't happen, I think that we still have a shot at success, but I do think that anyone's going to get burned out building on a technology that's growing at a snail's pace. And so if that doesn't change, then eventually the project is going to die. Maybe Craig will work on it for the rest of his life, but not everybody's going to. And we've already seen people leave the ecosystem because of that pace of growth, and seeing just the mindset of, hey, I can do something over here for now and come back later. I think that I don't want people to have that mindset. I want people to feel like I can do what I want to do on BSV today and have success with it. And I think that for a lot of people, the sort of cost of getting there is just extremely high without the support of an investor community. And so the fact that we have such a limited investor community, I think it's a big inhibitor to progress.
No, I definitely agree with you there. And I think you raised a lot of valid points, because that is literally how I see the community as well. It's frustrating to see how great the technology is, and then a slower rate of adoption. So I think as a community, that is something that we should be focused towards, to help bring that in, so that there are more investors, and it is easier to allow people to grow their ideas, such as yours. But I want you, we touched on Rough Runner a few minutes ago, and I kind of wanted to jump back in that. Can you tell can you elaborate a little bit more about Rough Runner, and then maybe talk about the Bark Battle game, and what are some things that players can be excited about with the addition of the playground? What are the things that you might be able to do?
Yeah, so DuroDogs Park, it's extremely open-ended. So it's a 2D game, and we built it with tools like Pixie and Spine is a really awesome animation engine. It's what makes what we do with the dogs possible.
Mm.
And so the way that people are approaching building with DuroDogs today is essentially we can provide basically a model dog. And that's currently what people are playing with inside of Rough Runner. Today, or by the time this comes out, hopefully you'll be playing with your own dog. But I think if I logged on today, I'd be playing with a model dog. And we just did that because we wanted to test the mechanics, see if it was fun, see if people enjoyed it. But from a developer standpoint, if you build the game with this model dog, then what our tools will allow to happen is basically when someone comes to the game or logs into the game, their actual dog is basically going to be superimposed onto that dog that you've built your game with. So everyone who plays the game has a customized experience. Today, what we've released is we have the kind of front-facing view of the dog that you have inside the training environment. You have this 3/4 view of the dog that is available inside of Rough Runner, and both of those can be used to create games. Now, something that we really want to encourage long-term and potentially short-term, if there's someone who's interested in this kind of thing, is we would love to see people create other representations of the DuroDog. Because you might want to create a game for DuroDogs, but you look at our 3/4 view and you say, hey, it's not the right aesthetic, or maybe you say, hey, I have a great idea for a game, but it really needs a top-down view, or maybe you're really ambitious and you say, hey, DuroDogs, great, cool, 3D is the future, and I want to build a 3D game. Eventually, and again, if someone wants to seize upon the opportunity, we can make it happen for you. The types of things we would want to see are, if I'm an artist and I think that I can do that, I can create 3D versions of DuroDogs. We want to encourage that. And then basically so if Alice creates the 3D version of the DuroDogs, and then Bob wants to create a 3D game, then the types of commercial relationships we see in the future is, all right, maybe Bob's game, you're getting paid 5 cents every time someone plays. And that's the kind of thing that's possible when everybody already has a BSV wallet. And maybe 1 cent of that, or half a cent, or 1/10 of a cent goes to Alice for each one of those plays. So if I'm a creator and I want to contribute something like a new version of the DuroDog that could be used inside of a bunch of different games, my upside from that type of creation is actually extremely high, because I can be getting paid every time someone uses that inside of a whole litany of games. So I don't know if that was a very direct answer to the question, but these are just some of the things that we're excited about seeing in the future that we think can help kind of marry users with game developers with asset creators in a way that can kind of help create games at a much more rapid pace than maybe what's been possible in the past.
Oh, I like that, and I like the way that you guys are thinking about this as a team. It's very looking at the broad picture instead of just solely on the game, but rather what can be done now, not only now but in the future, and I really like that. But I guess I wanted to speak a little bit about the items in games as well. How might items be used to give dogs boosts or benefits in these games, different games on Rough Runner, such as, like set bonuses that allow dogs to dig slightly faster, regenerate faster, or potentially having a higher chance of finding an item or something of the sort. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's really totally open-ended. So we would definitely look at, with our own games or inside of the training environment, giving certain advantages based on the possession of some item. And we've talked about a lot of ideas there. But what I would also encourage is that if you are a DuroDogs Park creator, potentially one way of making money or attracting a user base, obviously we're going to help you promote your game. But if we have hundreds of games, then you still have to have a way of standing out. And one method there might be, and this is something I floated at in our Discord that I know that some people have already picked up on, is all right, I'm going to buy up all the mining gear. You'll pay a little bit of money to do so because it's not that cheap, but you can do it. And then you could create a game where you have to have the mining gear to participate. And so you can, as an individual game developer, kind of place more utility onto specific items. And I think that that's a really cool and unique type of opportunity for a game creator. And I think it also speaks to sort of the value of these NFTs that people are picking up on. Things that people have discovered for free are being turned around and sold for, in some cases, hundreds of dollars.
Right.
And I don't think that's because the value of those items today is necessarily $100, but because people see that there's this unbounded, it's an overused word by ourselves and in the community in general, but this unbounded possibility for these items and for this ecosystem just because of how open-ended everything is. And that's a big part of why we felt like DuroDogs was a great project to focus on and a great kind of flagship game for this Nifty Jigs product, just because it's inherently extremely open-ended. And I think that that's the best way for us to take advantage of the kind of possibilities that come up with this better tooling to reward creators.
I like it. Excuse me. What can you tell us about the treasure map hunt and what users can do with that once they have all 4 pieces of the treasure map? Is it true that all 4 pieces of the treasure map have to be matching numbers?
There was definitely something posted by the DuroDogs account, which I do not manage, that implied that you may have to have all 4 of the same numbers. Certainly people have been acting as though that's the case. I know what the plan is. I'm not gonna be able to share it yet. It wouldn't be fair.
That's fine. I know we've talked in depth about the marketplace, but I was curious what your future plans for building out the marketplace may look like. I've seen some players advertising services for like dog sitting. Does your team plan to implement some form of that in a way that eliminates counterparty risks? There we go.
Yeah, right. I mean, right now on a small scale, we're happy to be your counterparty. So you can basically negotiate a trade in Discord, send the items in BSV to us, and then we make sure that the trade gets executed. That's not so scalable, which is why we're obviously going to do something a little bit more than that. And you mentioned that some people are building their own stores already. I know that there's already a store where you can fill up a cart and check out with hand cash. And I think that that's just really, really cool. And certainly, I don't think that we'll have the only marketplace for DuroDogs or the only marketplace on Nifty Jigs. That's not our intention. In terms of the marketplace that we're creating, what we want is a marketplace that really is well suited towards the type of game ecosystem that we're trying to create. And this is an ecosystem where when you're playing a game, you're very often going to be using NFTs from multiple gaming ecosystems. And so what we want is a marketplace that can be really easily accessed from any game, really customized in terms of the kind of storefront that a game wants to put forward, but that's also connected to the other games in the Nifty Jigs world, so that I can always sort of manage my NFTs holistically. And if I'm using NFTs in a certain app that have diverse origin, that I can access like a marketplace for both of those types of NFTs simultaneously. So we've shared our plans with some of the folks that are currently building on Nifty Jigs. And if you want to count yourself among those people who are building an app with Nifty Jigs, we'd be happy to show you more about what the marketplace is going to look like. But yeah, we're excited about it. I think it's going to be really cool.
I think so as well. Well, I love the new Dig Again button. Are there any plans for future streamlining the process of owning multiple dogs? For example, have there been any talks about potentially creating a Dig All button where that would allow users with multiple dogs to say, dig until all of the energy runs completely out, or be able to dig with multiple dogs simultaneously?
I think that's unlikely.
Mm,
And the reason is that we don't, any game has to strike the balance, or maybe not any game, but games in general have to find the right balance between paying to win or paying to get an advantage or paying for something in general versus not making it so that the only way to win is to put in a lot of money. And I think that we want the game, I guess, just to be a little bit fairer in the sense that people who have and are willing to put in a lot of money at the game, we want there to be some advantage to that because we need to make money, and we think that that is something that deserves an advantage. But on the other hand, we don't want it to be such a big advantage that the only way of being competitive is to put in as much money as possible.
mm,
One of the things that, if you're really serious about DuroDogs, but you don't have the money to invest in a huge amount of dogs, but if you do have the time to spend to actually dig with all of your dogs on a recurring basis, then you can get an advantage over people who maybe have more money but don't have the time, aren't willing to put in the time. So we're trying to find the right balance between the kind of making sure there's enough grind where we're rewarding the players who have less money but are willing to put in more time without making it too kind of onerously grindy for the people who are not into that kind of thing.
mm.
But what I would say is, like, right now, dig is our number one feature. It's the thing that people like to spend their time doing.
Mm.
And I think a big part of that is that people like discovering these NFTs. They really like getting all of the new things. We're building more ways of doing that kind of thing. So there's going to be other ways of engaging with DuroDogs, the DuroDogs ecosystem, whereby through your play, you can discover rare NFTs. So digging isn't going anywhere. We really love digging, but there's also going to be other things that you can do with your dogs. And so I think that, yeah, I think there's just going to be a lot of ways to play and engage with DuroDogs. And so if you like clicking buttons a lot, we're going to have really amazing button clicking opportunities. And if you want something different, then we're going to have some different things for you as well.
Absolutely. So, how are the rarity of the dogs and the items determined in game? And in the future, will there be a breakdown that shows the rarity of the items?
Yeah, so this is something that we're not trying to hide. While items are being dug currently, we don't know how many there ultimately will be
Mm,
because it's a function of how many digs they're going to be. And we don't want to reveal the dig probabilities. That's something that you can probably tease out
mm,
if you want, but we just think it's more fun if it's a mystery. Now, in terms of once items have already been released to be dug and then discovered, we want to make sure that that everyone knows, like, how many, for example, mining hats exist, how many mining goggles exist, how many Santa hats exist, etc.
mm.
And that'll be really obvious in the marketplace because the dig items aren't currently in the store. There's not necessarily like a place in the current UI where you can see that information really clearly, but there will be.
Okay, very cool. I'm sorry, did you have something else to say or add to that?
Oh, I was just going to say, for the dogs, we have kind of a rarity breakdown. It's sort of deeply embedded. You have to like click 2 links to find it. So that was a mistake. But we want to sort of surface that in the dog itself ultimately, so that you can understand kind of what's special about your dog. And ultimately, we want to have a lot more information about the dog and the dog's history and kind of how special is this dog, right available as soon as you kind of look at the detailed view of the dog. It's just a matter of what comes first.
Oh, I like that idea a lot. I would love to see that. Um, so I know that when DuroDogs was still you were running the beta, you were giving away free items to those who played and participated and found bugs during that process. Do you guys plan on implementing more of those type of giveaways in the future when you release new or offer new services?
Absolutely. We're doing just that with Rough Runner. So I mentioned that we've got about 150 people who went through a couple of steps in order to be an approved alpha tester.
Mm.
And I think everyone who plays the game and fills out like a form with feedback is going to get a free item. And we also have some contests for those alpha testers where they can earn treats from various types of engagements with the product.
Very cool. Well, is there anything you want to touch on that maybe we haven't already covered? What can people, where can people follow you? What's the best way to get in touch? And if you have anything you would like to mention, feel free to do so, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I really appreciate you having me on, giving me a chance to talk about DuroDogs and Nifty Jigs. What I would say is that if anyone wants to work with us in any way, whether you want to build your own NFT game or app using Nifty Jigs, if you want to participate in the DuroDogs ecosystem in some way, whether you want to build a game for DuroDogs, you want to create items, or something that we haven't even thought of that you think would be great to do with DuroDogs, please get in touch with us. And yeah, we're open for business. We're open to just be creative with you guys. And it's been really, really fun working with some folks in the space, getting to know people better through DuroDogs, and just look forward to continuing that.
Awesome, Jackson. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and taking the time out to talk with me and my viewers and about DuroDogs. I'm definitely excited about the things that you guys have coming and that you have planned for the future. But I suppose with that being said, that is going to wrap it up for us today, guys. I do hope you enjoyed. Please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below. Share this video with a friend, and also follow us on Twitter at BrittanyBits.